Hello and welcome to another episode of a very good social media podcast where we try to live up to that name every day. I'm your host, Zach Gelia. Let's get into it. So today I'm very excited. I feel like I say this every episode, but I'm very, very excited for this conversation with offensive tackle from the Arizona Cardinals, Kelvin Beachum. Kelvin and I crossed paths back in 2015 on basically my first official day with the Steelers. I was launching their Snapchat account at the time, which again kind of dates me a little bit, but launching Snapchat needed to get some guys to do some different content and selfies and things like that. And Kelvin was the first guy that I walked up walked up to and introduced myself to, and he was so kind and so nice, and joked around with me and made me feel really comfortable and basically helped me through that awkward situation that I then had to have with other players. And he'd help introduce me to other players and things like that. So Kelvin is always at the top of my list when we talk about most amazing people that I've gotten to work with on the athlete side. So it was great to just get a chance to chat and catch up with him, and really understand, content from a player's perspective. There's a lot that we understand and we know, and we've had conversations about on this show about developing content and how you do that properly, and the relationships you need to build and how things work. But it's great to hear from his perspective of the person being asked to create this content, how that works and how you do that effectively from our perspective and from our seat, when dealing with players. So a great conversation. Again, one of my favorite guys in all of sports, but just an amazing person who always takes the time to help, and has a lot of great things going on, and is getting ready for year 13 in the NFL. So it was great for him to, and amazing for him to be able to take the time to chat, and very excited to welcome Kelvin Beachum to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's wild to go back to kind of when we first met, and I don't know if you remember this, but this I will never forget for the entire time I work in this industry. But I remember I just started with the Steelers. We were just launching like the Snapchat account. And so basically, like, my boss at the time was like, well, you gotta like make sure you're at move-in day, make sure you're over like where the players walk in, ask them to do stuff. So I'm almost positive you were like the first person that I talked to and introduced myself to and asked you to basically do like a selfie or something. And you're like, all right, well, like let me understand, like, who are you? What are you doing? But from that point on, you're like, okay, we're good. Like, we can figure this out. And it, like, from then on, it was like that, just such a little thing, but that made me feel so comfortable the rest of the day, asking all these guys who, are like superheroes to me, to like do weird selfies on Snapchat. So I will always remember that, and I will always appreciate that.
Yeah, I remember those times, man. Over there at Latrobe. We've come a long way since Latrobe, that's for sure.
That's it, man. Well, cool. Well, honestly, the first way I like to kind of start the conversation is just to kind of open it up to you, and talk about your journey and how you got to where you are today, and then also just like the things you're up to now that don't necessarily involve football. Like, obviously, great offensive lineman for the Arizona Cardinals, but like the other stuff, always see on LinkedIn, always doing stuff in the community. So I'll let you kind of take it from here, man.
Yeah, man. So originally from my head, Texas, played all sports growing up. Went to SMU, got my undergrad in econ and sports management, my master's in organizational dynamics. Started every single game there, outside of my redshirt freshman year. So started 4 straight years. Got drafted to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2012. Played there for 4 years, Jacksonville for a year, New York for 3 years, and just finished up four here in Arizona. Philanthropically, has been in two areas. One is ending hunger, both domestic and worldwide. I've worked with a number of different partners in that regard. And then the second is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, so STEAM education, which has been the two areas that I really focus on. And then when you think about just kind of as an athlete, what I really believe is we have to break the stereotypes of the stereotypes that are put on us, the barriers that are put on us, the boundaries that are put on us. So, I'm a huge believer of becoming sophisticated enough to walk into any room, to have any conversation with any individual, no matter the creed, the caste system that we may be in, the ecosystems that we may be in, the silos or bubbles that we happen to be in, and really be able to break down some of those barriers, and really change the conversation from just athletes being the entertainment to how do we be a part of the creator and the value prop, so to speak, of what this sport has to bear. And for me, those are the things that I now think about on a very frequent basis is, how do we change the narrative from, hey, athletes are just entertainment, to the people that are also investing in the sport, investing in the business, and understanding all the risks that are associated with that business from a business standpoint. And for me, that is really the crux of where I sit, what I focus on, and what I like to talk about, to be honest with you.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's so amazing to have the platform, right? Like social media, like bringing it back to what we do here. It's like social gives every person a voice, whether,
Yep.
in some cases that's amazing, in some cases it's not so great, but but that's so important. And there's just so much conversation that needs to happen around so many different issues. And it's amazing to have, people like yourself who are willing to put themselves out there and stand for what they believe in and just kind of open everyone's minds to the conversations that need to be had.
Yeah. Without question. And I think, what social has done, and the conversation and the narrative that has been able to change and shift is that we're more than athletes. I think when I first started, boy, this is MySpace, like social way back when. But went from MySpace to Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to Snap to TikTok. Like I'm in the generation where, I remember when I was going to pre-combine training and it was like, hey, you need to build a Twitter account. You need to, start being able to control your own brand. And that was in, 2012. So more than a decade ago. So just to see everything that's happened in this regard, there wasn't a point in time where athletes could actually drive the conversation about what was going on with themselves on the field and also what was going on with themselves off the field. And, I think where we've come and where we're going is the power has somewhat shifted, especially from a public standpoint, to athletes in that regard and to the creators in that regard. And it's interesting to see, I always say, well, it's interesting to see what happens when the rabbit got the gun. And when you think about athletes, we have a lot at our disposal. Celebrities, entertainers, etc., have a lot at our disposal due to the massive platforms that we've been able to accumulate and to acquire. And the thing is, it stretches different platforms. The way in which you talk on Twitter is different than the way you talk on LinkedIn. The way in which you interact on TikTok is different than the way you interact on Instagram. The way in which you interact on Snap is completely different than the way you interact on Facebook or Be Real or any of these other, Retro, which is another kind of new and up and coming social platform that's out there. So it really just depends on the platform and the type of audience that's on that platform and the narratives that you are able to change and create due to each platform having something different to offer.
For sure. And I mean, like you brought up a great point is like early on in your career, people were telling you like, we should start doing this, start doing this. And I mean, that's back when I was first getting in the industry. So it was like, that was one of the hard parts about social early on, especially with athletes too, was like trying to make or trying to explain the value of what this stuff is. Like, like me asking you to do some weird selfie on Snapchat. It's like, how do I explain why this is valuable or why this matters? And now it's like kids coming out of college, like some of the colleges have
Oh,
better
ridiculous.
social media
Yeah.
departments than NFL clubs. And it's like, so they're already ready. Like they've already built their brands, like the NIL stuff, like everyone kind of has been brought up with this stuff. So there isn't really that explanation portion anymore.
Well, I would say that, I was very hesitant when it first came out. And I would say that I'm still somewhat hesitant because there are certain platforms that for me resonate better. For me, my family content, I'd rather have my family content on Facebook. I'd rather have stuff that I'm doing within the weight room and some of the things that are more associated with what I do on the football field on Instagram. Certain conversations that are spanning all types of audiences or use that for Twitter. And then my baby is LinkedIn, where I get to spend a lot of time interacting with business professionals and professionals from all walks of life. So, it's difficult, but at the same time, it's needed. And I would also say that it's also levels to it because, as an offensive lineman, I see the world from a much different vantage point. You got, phenomenal players behind you and Kyler and Chandler. They were able to bring a different type of eyeball to the equation than I ever could. So for me, I'm like, well, all right, well, Kyler's posting, one picture. Like me posting one picture, I gotta post pictures for a couple years to get the amount of likes that he's gonna get with one post. You know what I'm saying? Like, Chandler does a IG live and he breaks the internet. Like I don't have that type of bandwidth and that type of prowess from a social media standpoint. So from an offensive lineman, I almost was like, well, what value is this for me? And for me, it took a while to figure out, well, what is my lane? Find my lane and then go run very, very fast in that lane. And for me, like I said, it's been LinkedIn. At the time when I started using LinkedIn, there were no athletes on the platform. And now, you have all types of athletes, celebrities, and entertainers that are now on that platform. So, it's interesting. Once you find that lane and whatever that happens to be, and whatever people happen to know you for, you lean into that and go as far as you can. And you can go very, very, very far.
No, it's true. And I mean, like it goes like that mindset also kind of expands and extends to like people like me who are running team accounts, like Pittsburgh
Yeah.
Pirates. We have a great fan base, like diehard fan base, but like no matter what the content strategy is, no matter how amazing this plan could be, we're never going to beat the Yankees because they're the Yankees. So it's like,
Yeah.
just like you said, you lean into like, what can we be the best in the world at? And let's do that. Let's focus on that. Let's go full speed ahead and let's do that.
Well, I think, even if I think you were, or your team was the first, in my opinion, was the first team. I think this was mid-year. I think it was last year. Y'all had somebody that came out of the bullpen and y'all had a camera that ran behind him. I can say that that was Zach. That is something that the Pittsburgh Pirates did before anybody else. And I don't know if it was just a baseball thing, but now you got everybody that wants to run behind athletes with kind of this new angle, new point of view. But that's something that you got to go and define and something that you got to bring to the market. And I find that those are the things that people find valuable. I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn. Like I started this thing, Loam Room, last year. I had no idea an experiment because that's what I find so fun about social is you get to experiment. And that experiment turned into like 5,000 subscribers in a matter of a season, which, in the grand scheme of things, all right, well, Kelvin, that's 5,000. I'm like, it started from nothing. And you're telling me in 17 weeks, I got to 5,000 subscribers. And, it's been fun to play with and interact with the different tools and the different pieces of content that are out here, and just see where it'll take you and see where it'll go. But I would say that, you were the first to bring a point of view in that particular context. A gentleman leaving the bullpen and having a camera, and you can feel sometimes when you're in the stadium, you feel the waves of the crowd as you're running out, even though you're running out and you're trotting out, you can like feel the energy of the crowd. And literally that point of view, you really felt the energy of the crowd as you were getting ready to go out to the mound. So kudos to you, my friend.
I appreciate it. Well, honestly, I cannot take credit for that. That was our incredible director of production, Sterling, and the one who is running behind David the whole time, Madison. She's one of the best in the business. But it's true. Like it's all about doing something different, trying
Yeah.
something different, trying to bring your fan base into the entire experience
Yeah.
that you're trying to get. And that's like it's kind of a different segue to this question, but like that was something that always resonated with me when it was like, you talk to your friends and they're like, "Oh, you work in the NFL, that's great. Like, who are your favorite players?" And like it's always like it's never the people that they're thinking of. Is like, and it's always like you, Cam Hayward, like Chan was one too, like Dennis Gardeck,
Yeah.
like the guys who it's just like we all got along so well, like worked really hard, like just tried to bring everyone along on the ride. And like, how do you as a social team showcase that? Like it's basically our job to let people inside and see what we see
Yeah.
instead of just what you see when the guys are on the field with their helmets on.
I think what you did a phenomenal job of, and I think the teams, and I would say even when I was with New York, the Jets, and Chris Beams is a friend of mine, and the way in which they interacted, the interpersonal relationship is so important, and I think a lot of that is lost within social teams. Is hey, we just need to do content, but do you have a relationship with that individual? can you sit down and grab a cup of coffee with an individual, which we did, you
Yeah.
know. And I don't know if it was a kava. I know it was like an Hispanic spot that we ended up sitting down and
Yeah.
grabbing a meal together. Like it's the relationship that helps with the content because if I'm taking risk and I'm putting myself out there in a different light, and if you are taking risk, because from a team standpoint, there's a return on investment and a return on time. If I do this, will this bring something different, and will this be able to interact with the fan base in a much different environment? But it all boils into the relationship. I remember when you were with the Cardinals, we talked about doing this AMA on Reddit. Like that was something that nobody had really done, like from a team standpoint. It was different. It was different for me. It was different for you. Like, but it all at the end of the day, it all boils down to the relationship. And when you have a very good relationship, and I wouldn't even say very good relationship, but if you have a relationship of mutual respect, you respect my time, I respect your time. Hey, Kelvin, there's a piece of content that we wanted to have, done with you here in 2 weeks. Cool, man. It gives me time to make sure I got a haircut, make sure everything is nice and neat, and I come to it correct instead of I'm walking off the field and I ain't had a good day at training camp practice and you just put a camera in front of my face. Like, let's tone it down a little bit. So it boils down to the relationship, because when you have a relationship, you have mutual respect for one another. It makes it very, very easy to be able to do content because we know you have a job to do and we know that we have a job to do. And let's find a way to make it mutually beneficial for both of us.
And you bring up a great point. It's just trust. Like
Mhm.
me knowing that like if you say you're going to do something, you got me. Like I don't have to worry about it. And vice versa.
Yeah.
If I ask you to do something, I'm not going to put you in a bad spot or make you
Right.
look bad or cause
Right.
any sort of issues whatsoever. And it's like it's you work so hard to make sure that relationships are not transactional of just like
Correct.
every time you see me, it's like, oh man, this guy just wants something again. Like
Yeah.
it's very much like, how's everything going? How's the family? Like, let's actually, be
To know
colleagues and
each other.
friends.
Yes.
Exactly. Like, and then
Yes.
it just and that expands and extends to like being able to have those conversations where like, you know, JJ Watt was a great example.
Yeah.
I knew him at least well enough. Like I would ask him to do stuff all the time. I would give him like a long enough heads up and be like, we're thinking of doing this. Do you have any interest? And it was always like, you know what? I don't think that's for me. Like, I appreciate you asking. And it's like, cool. I won't bring it up again. Like, we'll start thinking of something else. But if there's anything you need from me, let me know because we want to help. So it was like very much like it's not always, or it doesn't always have to be a yes. And you don't like, it doesn't have to ruin your day that,
Yeah.
Kelvin Beachum said, no, he can't do this piece of content because there's that relationship there. There's that trust that it's like, well, I know he has a good reason why he doesn't want to do this and we'll find something else.
Yeah. What I would just say to any person that's listening to it is like you just have to find the time to build on the relationship. Interpersonal relationships, and I know we kind of got away from that quite a bit when COVID happened, but interpersonal relationships at the end of the day are really what drive the creativity, the innovation, the curiosity, to go and take risk and go and explore. And when you have that, it makes it very easy from a player's perspective to be willing and able to do what's necessary for the brand that we're associated with, or the brand that we're trying to build for ourselves, or the credibility and cachet that somebody from a social team is trying to build for themselves internally, and be able to use that to project and propel their careers forward as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a great point. Is like, the brands or the teams that you're working for. Like,
Correct.
you obviously have goals. You have your own personal goals and what you want to accomplish. But like, I think something that gets lost in the shuffle is like what are the players' goals? Like what, like if you don't
Yeah.
have those relationships, like how are you supposed to know? So like being able to sit down and talk and like, what are you trying to accomplish as as a brand, as a person, like, and how can we help? Instead of it being like, I have this amazing idea, I think this will be perfect. And it's like, that's not even close to what I'm trying to do. And so like I appreciate the effort you put in, but no.
And I mean, and I think I think you did a really good job with this. Is most of our conversations happen outside of the building. It wasn't on the football field. It wasn't in the cafeteria. It was outside the building. And I think, for young teams, especially, this is a young person's environment and a young person's game. Like simple. interpersonal dynamics. Hey, let's go grab a 30-minute meal. Let's go grab a coffee and get to like know one another. Where are you from? Like, what do you like? You know, who are your inspirations? Because when it's met again, that mutual respect for one another, it allows things to flourish in a very interesting dynamic. And the thing is, I'm an offensive lineman. I'm like if you talk about social media followings, I'm maybe top 30 on the team, maybe, because I mean, you think about your stars, your starters, offensive linemen, we're like below all that. So to be able to have and share the wealth among the roster is something, especially within football. Basketball is a lot different. Hockey, baseball is a lot different. But I would say football, because the rosters are so big, being able to share that across the roster, because people talk within a locker room. People talk about the photographer, people talk about the social media, people talk about the video content. Especially this younger crowd, they're looking. What did that video that the Cardinals posted? What is that video that the Pirates posted? What is that video that the Yankees or the Chargers posted? That got everybody's eye. Who broke the internet this weekend? Like, why did they break the internet? So guys and girls are very interested in what's happening on social and when something hits and goes viral, and who did it and why did they do it. So they're very conscious. But I would say, my encouragement is just make sure you spread the love. Offensive linemen and interior defensive linemen need some love as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, you bring up a great point. It's like you think of it from like the person who's creating the content or posting or strategizing this stuff. Like you're thinking of, okay, what's my boss going to think? Like, how can I position this to, our team president or things like that?
Yeah.
But it's like you do need to remember that like the guys that you are sharing on this stuff, like they're going to have something to say about it too. And you always want to make sure that like if your leadership has that buy-in on what you're trying to do and the locker room has the buy-in on what you're trying to do, there's no better situation.
Without question. Without question.
Well, cool, man. Well, honestly, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This has meant so much to me. And like I said, like I need to get like a Beachum jersey or something up behind me here pretty soon because it's like it's wild that it ended up like my first stop in the NFL. You were like the first person I talked to, and then my last stop in the NFL to this point is like it was you and I again. So it was amazing to get to chat and just catch up.
Well, who's to say we may not run into each other again? So, appreciate the relationship more than anything, Zach. Happy for you and your family. You got more than enough babysitters there in the Steel City, and just happy for you that you're having a blast there with the Pirates.
Definitely, man. I really appreciate that. Good luck in year 13, you said.
Year
Uh,
13, man.
I'm excited, man. Going to be watching from the Steel City, watching the Valley closely, and hoping for great things.
Yes, sir. Thank you much.